obviously, as I mentioned to the listeners prior to this interview, you work for Paramount Pictures, which is a huge company.
Mhm.
How did you get into this role at such an iconic company?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of started off before this. So my last job was at a company called ThinkJam, and they are a digital marketing publicity agency, and they primarily work in the entertainment space. So while I was at ThinkJam, I was working for clients like Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, ABC, Fox, even Paramount. So that's kind of how I got into entertainment, and that was my first job out of college. So I was there for about 3 years, and I knew that I wanted my next step to be on the studio side. So within, like, I would say the last year I was at Think Jam, I was on and off applying to any like digital marketing job that came up at any of the studios, and it all kind of happened at once. Like, I would say there was a 3-month period where I had gone in to interview at Universal, I interviewed at CBS, I interviewed with Netflix. I had like 3 different interviews for 3 different positions at Disney, and Paramount was kind of the last one that I had gone in to interview for. And it was probably the interview I was like least prepared for. I didn't really even research the team by that point, right? Like, after interviewing at all the studios, I was like, it'll be the same thing. Like,
At this
uh,
point, right?
yeah. And it's funny because I didn't realize until I went into the interview that I knew my boss, my now boss, when she was at Warner Brothers. So,
Oh,
yeah, I had lunch with her. Like, we had sushi one time, like kind of just taking out clients for lunch. Um, so yeah, and after that, it happened pretty quickly. Like, I had 4 rounds of interviews, and they offered me the job. Yeah, that was kind of that.
now with Paramount, you are doing digital marketing.
Mhm.
And so that requires you to do a lot of social media work. And I know that you have a lot of experience with that. Is there a hack that you can share? Maybe something that just the average person who's not into marketing or media would know?
I don't know if this is a hack, but I feel like from what I've learned, like, one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram is Eva Chen, and she's the head of fashion partnerships there. And they're always saying, I mean, and like, I personally still do this, but they're always saying to like post tons of content, like, you don't have to make things too filtered, just making sure that you're constantly like keeping your accounts updated. That way, like, the algorithm kind of shows up in your favor. And I think, like, especially right now, what I've been playing around with personally is just like testing. Like, I've been taking like content that I post on TikTok and seeing how it performs in Reels and like what kind of performs better. And like, actually right now my content's performing better on Reels for some reason. Um so yeah, I think just like testing out your content, trying new content, posting frequently, that all can help anyone.
I think that the reason Reels are doing better than TikTok is because it's a much less saturated space. You would think that it would be more saturated because everybody and their moms has Instagram, but
Okay.
almost nobody is really using this Reels feature because they're used to TikTok. So that doesn't surprise me that it's doing better, but it does surprise me that the idea of like posting, like constantly posting. I know that posting every day is great for the algorithms. Do you think that you should be posting multiple times a day or once a day is good?
Especially during quarantine, because I feel like I have nothing to post on my feed. It's just been like Instagram stories, and honestly, like, when I first opened the app, I feel like I'll look through Instagram stories before I'll look through my feed. So I think that's just like where people naturally look first.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's easier to post more frequently on stories rather than in feed. So
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I go to my stories first. People want like something super quick. And with Instagram's new algorithm, you hardly see the people that you want to see, I feel like, on your feed anyways. You're seeing the people who are influencers who have a ton of, comments on their posts, even though you don't know them, your parents' post is never going to pop up on your timeline anymore.
yeah, and even I think, like, with my Instagram profile, the way that my feed kind of is shared to me has changed like week over week. Like sometimes like when I'm done looking at all the content for like the last 3 days, it'll show me just reels, or sometimes it'll show me like suggested content, whereas like before it would show you like old posts that you had already seen. And then my dog has an Instagram account and his profile looks different than mine. So like at the bottom, it's not like an explore page and you don't see your notifications and you don't even have like an icon to post. Like there's like reels and like shop. So they're definitely like beta testing a whole bunch of new stuff for the platform. That's been interesting to see.
Yeah, I miss the good old days when you would scroll and it would just be a legitimate timeline of who posted what when. Remember that? Remember those days so
The
long
good old
ago? But
days.
yeah, mine's still in the phase where like sometimes something will pop up from like 5 or 6 days ago that I've probably already seen a couple times, but
Mhm.
it's just like renewing it. And I don't know who on their marketing side and on their analytics side was like, this is the best thing to do, because as a viewer, I disagree. As a user of the app, I find it annoying. But
Same.
you mentioned that you previously, before going to Paramount, you worked for Think Jam. They're obviously an award-winning entertainment marketing company. They work with, film and TV. You kind of mentioned that. So I'm sure that while you were there, you had a ton of really cool projects. What was your favorite project?
There's two that come to mind every time someone asks me this. And the first one would be I worked on an indie animated film called Loving Vincent. And at the time, it was like my first theatrical campaign. And it was really like it only opened in 2 theaters, and the following week opened in like 5. Like it was really like an indie movie, but for some reason it caught on and it actually got nominated for an Academy Award that year. So it was just really exciting to see like and be a part of a project from like where it was only in 1 theater to like having it open nationally, like going through the award season with them and even home end. So that was like my first experience, I guess, like going through a campaign with something like that. Um, and I think my other favorite, I'm personally a really big fan of Grey's Anatomy and everything like Shonda Rhimes. So when I was at Think Jam, one of the accounts we won was TGIT. So we worked on Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, and even when Station 19 was starting. So this was a couple of years ago. And we were actually the team that made the little, the hash flags that you see on Twitter. So anytime
Oh,
you hashtag Grey's Anatomy, they still use the ones that we created a couple of years back. So I worked on the last season of Scandal and then the 300th episode of Grey's Anatomy. And back then, like Snapchat was still really big. And they wanted to do like a live snap of the 300th episode. But of course, like, as you know, things have to be mocked up, and approved ahead of time. So the week before that episode aired, I had actually had to sit through and like watch that episode 7 times in 7 different iterations. So like the first time I got it wasn't fully done being edited, and then like the next iteration it wasn't colored. The next time like it didn't have music. The next time they added like green screens for like all the phones and like all the screens you see in the hospital. So that was like one of the most experiences because I had that episode memorized by the end of it. But just because I'm a really big Shonda fan, was really fun to work on.
you talked about how you knew that you wanted to make this transition into kind of working on a set. And I'm sure that working with Think Jam and seeing things like that come your way made you feel like, I really want to be there while this is happening. I want to see what this process is like. And I think that that's important to mention, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people coming out of college who know that they want to get into entertainment and maybe have a marketing degree or a comms degree like me, but they don't know where they want to be within the entertainment industry, like behind the scenes, on the set, in front of the camera. Like, what do we want to do? What
Mm-hmm.
advice do you have for young professionals who want to get into this industry but don't really know what part they want to really focus on?
Yeah, I think, something that I didn't know going into it was that at almost every single studio, like none of the creative is done in-house. Like I had no idea that like no one does social media in-house, like trailers aren't done in-house, posters aren't done in-house. Like there's agencies and vendors that do this all. And I think like when you're starting out, and studio jobs in my opinion are like harder to come by. I think like if you can get an internship and get your foot in the door, then that's obviously really great. But another great way to kind of see what the industry is like is to start off on the agency or the vendor side, because like I mentioned, I got to work with almost every single studio and see how they work, how their processes were different. I got to work on a number of different campaigns, whereas like now on the studio side, you're only working on like 5 to 10 titles a year, whereas when you're on the agency side, you could be working on like 50 titles a year because you have that many clients. So I do think it's a great way to get exposure. I would also say to be open, especially for entry-level jobs. Like I started off in publicity, and a door kind of opened in the social media digital world, where I could kind of test the waters, and I think like I was able to grow more quickly in the social role. So I guess like be open to see, you might think that you want to start in production, but really you want to do like in theater marketing, and you just never know. So I guess you could say like be open as well.
Yeah, that's great advice, to kind of just go in with an open mind and take whatever you can get, especially now, just with what's going on. It's like, be happy with what you can get. And I feel like for creatives, I think I say this like every episode, but for creatives, if you have a passion for the industry, which you really have to work in entertainment, just because of how it's unstable, it's crazy to, like,
Mhm.
a lot of jobs are that way within the industry. So you have to have the passion to really make it. But I think that as somebody who is fresh out of college, like, that really is the best mindset to have, because especially now, if you're looking at LinkedIn or networking for something very, very specific, it's unlikely that you're going to find exactly what you're looking for right away. And I mean, you're a great example of this. Even if you think you know what you want, you're probably going to be exposed to something you didn't even know existed. And that's a great point, that you watch film, you watch TV, and you think everything is done in the studio, and it's really not. So what aspect of the job do you want to be a part of? And then target that. If you are into social media, maybe working at Warner Brothers really isn't the place that you have to be successful and to work on feature films, right?
I think before, like anytime I saw like an executive assistant job or like something like that, I'd be like, no, like I'm not going to do that. But actually now that I know like a ton of executive assistants, I think I'm jealous, because like they're the ones that actually know everything. Like they're so in the know, they know everything that's going on. Like anytime you need to know like gossip or like just hear about meetings that are happening, like they're the ones to go to. So I think also like if there are opportunities that don't feel like you would ever apply for, like also do that, because now I'm jealous that I like didn't start off that way, because I feel like they know so much.
And assistant work is, I think, great work to get experience in multiple areas. For me, I had an internship last summer where I was a PA, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had, because I got to see how everything functioned within a studio, and then from there could say, okay, this thing that I thought I wanted to do isn't as glamorous as I thought it was. So I actually want to do this instead. And being an assistant is great because you kind of get to dip your toes in all the different places, but you also don't have that like huge responsibility of one area succeeding or not.
There's also less of a commitment there. And I think like, in things like PAs, interns, assistants, the other great thing is like we all know that you will wear so many hats during your time in those roles, and being able to say that, and being able to say that you can just jump from one task to another, and like you're not afraid to get your hands dirty, and like you can be the ones like handling the shipments, or you could be the ones like in the meetings with executives. I think like being able to say that you have that experience is also really valuable, when recruiters are looking at candidates, for sure.
Okay, so I like to wrap up the interview with a fun question. And I know that you've talked a lot about TikTok, and
Mhm.
I'm curious, who is your favorite person on TikTok and why?
Okay, so someone that I follow, that I think has really funny content is Erica X Priscilla. She pretends essentially to be like a really over the top, obnoxious influencer, in all of her posts. And I think it's just really funny, just like making fun of like influencers in general. And she does a really good job of it. And she's like more recently starting to do like collabs and things like that. Um, but I think like my favorite part of TikTok is like when people tell me what to buy on Amazon, because like I didn't have Amazon Prime until COVID. Like I got Amazon Prime in March, and since then like they just gave me a notification that I've placed like 74 different orders. So not just 74 items. Like some of those orders had multiple items, but since March I've ordered things from Amazon Prime 74 times. And they're right. They're like things you never know you needed from Amazon, and like I'm like, "Oh, I need this."
Yeah, like those pocket vacuums, or like
Yup.
those like door locks that like slide into the door
Oh
for your
yeah, I've seen
hotel
those.
room. I like to end the interview on a positive note, and I ask my guests to bring something to cheers to at the end of the interview. So, do you have anything positive to share?
I think, more recently, because we're talking about this like 4 days after we found out the election results. I think like in general, I feel like everyone's mood at work, my friends on social media, like everyone just seems so much more positive, and there are things for everyone to look forward to. So I think just in general, like here's to everyone being happy for the remainder of COVID, and hopefully the pandemic goes away soon.
Honestly, yes. Wear your mask.
Yes, wear a mask.
Thank you so much for joining me. This has been really fun. It was great to get kind of the behind the scenes of what it's like to work for a huge company like Paramount.